What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co host, Alex Wilson. And the Giants are on the search for a new head coach after firing Brian Dable on Monday and promoting Mike Kafka to the interim head coach, who has a chance to become the permanent head coach. But there's a lot of candidates that he's going to have to be competing against. And of course, just demonstrating his abilities as the interim head coach over the next 7 weeks if he really wants that job. But who are those candidates? Well, according to Paul Schwartz of the New York Post, the Giants already kind of have a working shortlist. They have some names in mind, and we're going to go ahead and react to those names. There's about 8 of them, or give or take a couple, and we're going to go through each and every single one, give you guys our honest opinions on each of these candidates, and tell you who are our favorites. Now, not everybody is on this list. This is just the list from Paul Schwartz that we're reacting to. There's other guys like Clint Kubiak isn't on this list. I can't wait to talk about him. We're probably going to do a whole episode dedicated to him and some other candidates as well. But the guys on this list from Paul Schwartz, the reason that we're reacting to it is because Paul Schwartz really knows his stuff. He talks to a lot of people in the New York Giants building. He's got great insider information. And usually when he says something, you want to listen to it because it's probably coming from a source well respected and highly ranked in that building. So that's why we want to go over this particular list of head coaching candidates that Paul Schwartz mentioned. And we're going to go ahead and give you guys our opinions on them. So before we dive into it, though, Alex, how are you feeling? You know, the Giants fired Brian Dable a couple years ago, or a couple days ago. Probably should have been a couple years ago. A couple days ago, they fired Brian Dable. And now we're kind of picking up the pieces of the rubble and looking ahead to the future. But how do you feel as the Giants kind of embark on another head coaching search?
I mean, listen, we've been here for like 3 or 4 of them already, so it's nothing like surprising. The only thing I will say is this. We've probably never been as attractive of a destination as we are right now, and we probably have never, had a situation where we have a whole there's such a wide net, a lot of options. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors right now with guys, like Kevin Stefanski and Matt LaFleur and, obviously Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin a couple years ago was a pipe dream. Now it's like not a pipe dream. Matt LaFleur was a pipe dream. Now there's legitimate smoke that the Green Bay Packers could move on from him. Like, there's a lot of really good coaches that become available if some things happen. The Giants might be walking into one of the most beautiful situations in terms of finding a head coach that you could ask for, and they have Jackson Dart at the helm, Scadaboo, they have culture setters, and they have draft capital. So I'm more excited than usual for this kind of head coaching search because of the big net that they can cast. I just don't know if I trust Joe Shane to actually execute that strategy and find the guy we actually want and need. So we're going to discuss a lot of these guys, what they bring to the table, and kind of, a perspective on what they would bring.
Exactly. And I'm with you. I kind of share that sentiment. I'm nervous about Joe Shane conducting the head coaching search, but I'm really excited for the head coaching search because there are some very attractive pieces, a great defensive line, some young talents like Carter, like Neighbors, and of course, Jackson Dart. That's why I'm more excited for the search than I have been in years past, because the Giants have seemingly a star potential franchise quarterback in the wings. There's going to be a lot of coaches that want to get their hands on him. Pause. All right, let's go ahead and dive into these head coaching candidates. We're going to go from bottom to top here and start with Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman, because Marcus Freeman particularly stands out to me because if you listen to what Paul Schwartz had to say in the video where he talked about all of these candidates, he paused for a second when Marcus Freeman got brought up, and he kind of looked at it and he nodded his head, and then he said, "I heard that the Giants hold him in high regard." That's what he said. And honestly, me too. I think Marcus Freeman is an awesome head coach for Notre Dame. When you look at what he's accomplished over the last 3 or 4 years, however long it's been, I believe he took over at the end of the 2021 season for just the bowl game, and then he coached 2022 and so on and so forth. But in that time, he has turned the Notre Dame college football program into a juggernaut. They went to the national championship last year. Of course, they lost to Ohio State, but they're back again this year, 7-2. Could definitely very well be back in the college football playoffs, and who knows if they go on another run. But Marcus Freeman has his team play with heart. He has his team play with a sound defensive mind, and he is a leader of those young men. Now, pros and cons, though, of course. What are the cons? Well, he's pretty new to coaching, not just the head coaching, but coaching. Really only got his start in 2018. It's not like some of these other guys on this list who've been coaching for 20 odd years. Marcus Freeman is only 39 years old. He's young, and while he is a leader and he's had a lot of immediate early success, he doesn't have a ton of experience. And so that could be a barrier for him as he kind of maybe makes that jump into the NFL. But Alex, I want to get your take on Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame head coach, somebody that the Giants hold in high regard. I like him a lot, but do you think that that might be the wrong path for the Giants to take to go after a guy who's a little bit less experienced?
I mean, listen, he is, in terms of less experience, like you said, he's like borderline not experienced at all. So, in terms of being a head coach, the NFL, college, much different ball game. But listen, we've gone the route of bringing in a coach who's already a head coach in Pat Shermer. We brought in coordinators, we brought in special teams coaches, we brought in every ounce of talent from all around the freaking league that have had NFL experience, and none of them have worked, right? None of them have worked. All have NFL experience, none of them have worked. So the Giants are going to go with someone new, fresh, without that already existing head coaching experience at the NFL level. Like, you might as well go for the guy who's going to galvanize your team. Now, there's some things in terms of coaching and philosophy that I really like about him. He introduced a teaching tool called the Wise Men Plays, where he has his players study other teams' clips, good and bad, to learn decision making and situational awareness. So there's some interesting stuff there. He also was like, he embraces struggle. When teams struggle, and you're going to have those problems, you're going to have those issues, you're going to run into a bad game or two. How do you respond to that? Like, the one thing you'll say about Freeman is that his team fights and his team plays hard, and that's a requirement, right? Like, you play hard, you give everything you got, you don't dodge it, you don't dodge the accountability, you look it in the face and you kind of attack it. That's how you build winners. Winning is a mentality. Winning is a mindset. The Giants have been taught to lose, and losing is also a mindset and a mentality. So, you kind of look at Freeman, what he's done with Notre Dame. Like, they've built a winning mentality. I don't care about bringing in a head coach that is good for Jackson Dart. That's what Brian Dable was supposed to be. And like, they've been horrible this year. And despite the fact Jackson Dart's great, you need to have a coach who's going to be good for the team, and the coordinators and assistants are the ones that need to be good for Dart. So like, I think there's a layered approach to that, but whoever this head coach needs to be has got to be a leader of men. He has to have a culture of winning. This dude has broken many records for Notre Dame already. And, you just look at, there's some quotes, I'll read one to you. They say he's a leader of young men and who's learning the finer points of being a head coach day by day. He's a better head coach now than when he was hired. So he's taking big steps forward. He knows how to lead. Those are all really positive things to me. So, I'm not ruling him out because of inexperience. I like the fact that he leads a team and he doesn't lead an individual or just one unit.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to summarize the positives of Marcus Freeman. And I love that you kind of brought that up. He's a leader of these young men, but he's a leader of the whole team. He has a defensive background. He was a defensive coordinator prior to becoming a head coach, but that doesn't mean that he's strictly defensive. He's very much one of those CEO type of leaders that manages the entirety of that Notre Dame team and college football program. And I think that's what's made him so successful immediately in his head coaching career. I mean, literally immediate success there at Notre Dame, and really impressive success. He was the coach of the year for the 2024 season for all that he accomplished, and very well deserved, very well earned. And this is a guy that I think that the Giants should definitely have an interest in. I don't know if he's near the top of my list, Alex, but he's definitely not on the bottom half of it. I'll say that. I like Marcus Freeman. And if the Giants want to kind of embrace youth, they have a very young roster. They have some very exciting young pieces: Dart, Scadaboo, Neighbors, Carter. If they want to embrace that youth and go for a guy who can galvanize them, as you said, Marcus Freeman does make a lot of sense. And I guarantee you he would unlock that defense. That's for sure. Now, the questions, though, about inexperience and some of those other things, that does lend itself to one of the concerns that we've had, Alex. Can a guy like this hire great coordinators? That would be a big question mark for me. Does he have connections? Does he have networking experience to be able to say, okay, let me bring in this experienced OC or this experienced DC? In fact, I actually think that the Giants, if they were to hire Marcus Freeman as the head coach, good chance Mike Kafka gets retained as the offensive coordinator to keep that continuity for Jackson Dart. And I think that'll be true for several of these candidates that we're going to get to. But Marcus Freeman, really like him, guys. Let us know your thoughts on him down below. And since we're about 10 minutes into this episode, if you're really enjoying, do make sure to smash the thumbs up button. Next guy is Colts defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo. If you guys think that name sounds familiar, it does. He used to be a member of the New York Giants coaching staff. He was their defensive backs coach in 2018. He did such a great job that he then got hired as the defensive coordinator of the Cincinnati Bengals. He had his ups and downs in Cincinnati. However, if you really watch that Cincinnati defense, they had a clear and obvious lack of talent when he was the defensive coordinator. He then moved on to the Indianapolis Colts and is coaching that defense as they are now, what are they, 8-2? I believe on the season. Colts are having an absolutely electric year. They've had standout performers all across their defense, especially on the defensive line. DeForest Buckner now out for the season, but was having a great campaign prior to that. Lou Anarumo is definitely a leader among men. He's a Staten Island native. He's a New York guy. He's got connections to the organization. There is a lot that the Giants are personally going to be attracted to when it comes to Lou Anarumo. But Alex, tell me why you may or may not be attracted to him as the Giants head coach.
Yeah, I mean, so the one thing I do like about Anarumo is that he's really good at making adjustments. His schemes are very flexible. He's always tweaking and kind of upgrading and improving things. So he's not stagnant. And I think that's a problem with a lot of coordinators in general in the NFL is that they get stagnant unless you're at the cutting edge, like a McVay or a Shanahan, like they're on the cutting edge of developing new systems and attacking weaknesses. Anarumo tends to lean in that direction in terms of on the defensive side. He's very like execution based and, everything when things are good and everyone's executing their assignments, the defense is insane. The problem is when players are not executing well in his system, there can be flaws. And I think that's kind of what you look at our defense and you say, all right, like there's some weak links here, right? Like if he had Deontay Banks on his team, his entire defense would fall apart. Like if we had a run stopping issue, the defense would fall apart. So he's very, very like creative and flexible with his defense. Like you said, he's a good leader too. So I would say like he's an average candidate. Like for Lou Anarumo, I don't love him. I don't hate him. He's like my baseline average head coaching candidate right now because he's got some good leadership skills, but he's not like this, like just modernized, dominant defensive coordinator. He's a good defensive coordinator. He's had his issues, but he's not anything like crazy, insanely special. Like I would say Spags is like the exception of like, he's a tremendous defensive coordinator, probably better than Anarumo and also can lead, has head coaching experience. Of course, I don't even know if he wants to be head coach, so we'll get there eventually. But I do like Anarumo as like kind of like a baseline average candidate.
Well, you better start warming up to him because while we're discussing Lou Anarumo, I just found this report from Dan Duggan of The Athletic that came out an hour ago. So I'll go ahead and mention this since it's relevant to what we're discussing. He put out this tweet saying it's too early to credibly handicap the search, but if I had to predict the three favorites as of today, I'd go with number one, Lou Anarumo, number two, Mike McCarthy, who we're not talking about in this episode, but we will in the future, and number three, Marcus Freeman, who we just discussed. Dan Duggan also added at the end of that tweet, I think it ends up with Anarumo and Kafka staying as OC. So very interesting stuff right there. It's also important to note the connections with Lou Anarumo don't start and end with his time as a defensive backs coach in 2018. There is a clear connection between Lou Anarumo and general manager Joe Schoen. So if Joe Schoen is sticking around to make this decision, that's going to play into this. Joe Schoen used to work in the Miami Dolphins front office. While he was there, Lou Anarumo was a member of that Miami Dolphins coaching staff, and the two of them have a very strong relationship. So that connection could lend itself as Lou Anarumo potentially auditions for the New York Giants head coaching job. So he's a good coordinator, a really good coach. This guy is a leader. He's a hard-ass guy. Like, he's going to definitely bring a new mentality to that locker room. He's a no BS kind of guy, rah-rah kind of guy for sure. And I think there is kind of a disciplinary approach that he takes to things that the Giants haven't necessarily had in recent years. And that could be one of the attractive selling points of Lou Anarumo. But I'll just say this, Alex. I think the Giants need to be careful not doing connection hires. The connection hires, just looking into the past, admiring the guys that they've known for a very long time, the nepotism, that's definitely a concern for me. We've talked about that a lot before, but with Lou Anarumo, I will say I do think he is a strong candidate. I think he's a great leader, and depending on who he could bring with him over here to the Giants coaching staff, I am interested in this guy, but he's not at the top of my list personally.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is a type of coach that, he's a very good defensive coach. It'll change the way the Giants draft and go about free agency, though, because you're not going to go the Giants. If you go with a guy like Anarumo, he needs specific types of players on his team, like especially on the defensive side. You need guys who don't miss tackles. You need guys who execute well. Like, you need disciplined players. The Giants have, in the past couple years, have just gone for the athletic freaks. Like, they're just like, BPA is great. And sometimes their version of BPA is just going for the best athletes. Like, we need to upgrade the athletics on our team. Anarumo may not care as much about that stuff. He might be like, I think that this guy's not the best athlete in the world, but his tackling fundamentals and technique are fantastic. And this guy, he always gets the job done in critical situations. It may change their whole philosophical kind of approach to drafting and free agency, which, to be fair, isn't a bad thing, because the Giants do miss a lot on those free agency options, and also in the draft as well in the mid to late rounds. So, I think that his style will actually counteract Joe Shane's approach a little bit. So that would be interesting. I wonder what that would look like, but he definitely isn't the top. I think he's a good baseline standard. Like, I don't love it. I don't hate it. I'm okay with it type of hire, but it's definitely not the highest upside one, is what I would say. You're definitely getting an experienced individual, though. That's for sure.
I'd agree with you. And I do think the Giants are keen on bringing in experience, and Anarumo would do that. Plus, he can collaborate with Joe Shane since they have that connection. He's a good candidate. He's not my favorite candidate, but he is a good candidate. And I do think he would be a culture setter. And more than anything, the New York Giants do need a head coach who can be a culture setter. Now, let's go to the next guy, though. Commanders offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury. A lot of you guys know Cliff Kingsbury, of course, because he did wonders last year with Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders. That offense was electric. He really sped up the process of developing Jaden Daniels. But a lot of you also remember Cliff Kingsbury from his time as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. Infamously, he was there when they drafted Kyler Murray and immediately kicked Josh Rosen out of the door after just one season. But he did a good job developing Kyler Murray in some ways, but overall, the product wasn't finished. And I think Cliff Kingsbury should have had more time in Arizona, personally. I don't think that they should have fired him when they did. I think they should have given it another year or two to see how things played out. They didn't do that. I think that really messed things up for Kyler, and I think they've kind of been in flux ever since. But Kingsbury wasn't perfect during his time with the Arizona Cardinals. There's a reason he was fired. Things were a little disorganized, a little loose. I think his leadership and his ability to be that CEO was called into question many times while he was coaching the Arizona Cardinals. Now, Kingsbury has plenty of coaching experience. I mean, going back to when he was coaching Patrick Mahomes in college, of course, he's been all around. He knows all of these young quarterbacks. He does quarterback camps, and he's very in tune with the quarterbacks, and he knows how to scheme an offense and make an offense comfortable for quarterback. But when he was in Arizona, was his defense any good? No, it wasn't. And that's part of the concern here. Does Cliff Kingsbury just connect with the offensive side of the ball, or can he connect with everybody in the building and get everybody playing at a high level? That's the question mark with Cliff Kingsbury. But I do think when you look back on his time at Arizona, there was promise that was flashed. And I think during his time now with the Commanders, he's done an excellent job as well. And maybe he's learned a lot of lessons along the way. And a second stint as a head coach, a second opportunity, could potentially pay off for Kingsbury. So I think there's potential there. Alex, what are your thoughts on Cliff Kingsbury as a potential head coach?
I mean, yeah, look, he's experienced. His biggest weaknesses in terms of just what he failed to do a lot with the Cardinals, and even during his college stints, like, he's not the best high leverage decision maker, and he's not the best leader. He is the coach you bring in to really get the most out of Jackson Dart, though, right? And I kind of said before, I prefer to kind of steer in a different direction, just because I want a guy who's like a real leader of men. Like, Cliff Kingsbury to me is like he's an offensive specialist. He is fantastic at developing a system that, I mean, he developed a system for Jaden Daniels that turned him from a rookie to an all-pro quarterback overnight. Like, we all love Jaden Daniels. We knew he was going to be great, but we didn't expect to see the version we saw last year. Cliff Kingsbury had a direct hand in that. He is a specialist at designing friendly schemes for quarterbacks. So if you want to get the most out of Jackson Dart in your offense, he's definitely the guy. Like, he'd be the best OC for Jackson Dart, no doubt about it. But him as a leader, him as a decision maker in big moments, those are where I still have questions about his capabilities. In those interviews, though, I'd be, if I were the Giants, presenting him on the spot with multiple different scenarios to see if he can react and make the right decisions. Like, they have to test his weaknesses in these interviews for me to really feel comfortable he can do it in a game scenario. And also what has he learned about being a leader? What has he learned about managing a team, not just an individual? Will he get too roped up in the offense, and then will the defense fall off? Like, these are things that you have to think about because we just watched it happen with Brian Dable. So I like Kingsbury if he's learned from his mistakes and learned from his weaknesses and learned about them, how to turn them into strengths. But the jury's still out on that for me.
Definitely. Jury is still out for me as well. I think Cliff Kingsbury this year, there's been a lot of adversity for that Washington Commanders offense. Jaden Daniels, of course, has had several injuries this season, unfortunately. I say unfortunately because even though he plays for the Commanders, I really like watching him play. I don't want the Commanders to have a great season, but I want Jaden Daniels to have a good season because I like him. But he had, of course, a dislocated elbow, but prior to that, he was dealing with a knee injury. Him going in and out of the lineup has done nobody on that team any favors, particularly Cliff Kingsbury. But I think that he's made the most of a bad hand. Marcus Mariota, he's gotten some pretty decent performances out of him. Even last year when Daniels missed a couple of games, Marcus Mariota stepped in there and ran the offense pretty well. I think that it's an offense that quarterbacks can get a hold of pretty quickly. And I think that's something that you want to kind of highlight when you're looking at his potential fit here with the New York Giants. But what I will say, though, I don't think that the Giants should go out there and hire a head coach just because they think that he can fit with Jackson Dart. There are a lot of other issues with this team, Jackson Dart being the least among them. Yes, the priority for this team is to develop Jackson Dart. His development is priority number one. But that doesn't mean there's not a 1B or a 1C or a priority 2 that's really important as well. And those other priorities need to be addressed. And I'm not sure if Cliff Kingsbury directly addresses all of those priorities. And that's where it gets brought into question for me. I just don't want to see the Giants make a hiring just for one player. Hire a guy for the team because this team needs a leader, not just the one player. I think Dart's going to be good regardless. Now, head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Tomlin. Could he be available this offseason? This could happen in a couple of ways. Number one, he could be relieved of his duties. He could be fired. Mike Tomlin's been with the Pittsburgh Steelers for a very long time. Over the last several years, he's made the playoffs every year. They have not been winning in the playoffs at all. And the Steelers might feel, and this is kind of the rumors that we've been hearing for a couple of years, they might feel like it's time to turn a new leaf and start a new chapter of the franchise. As a result, Tomlin could be relieved or potentially, Alex, I do believe he's under contract in 2026. He could be traded. Now, I think that's a non-starter for the Giants. I don't think they're going to give up draft capital for a head coach, although we'll see. Stranger things have happened. But Tomlin is obviously the number one, maybe number two head coaching candidate in the league if he does become available. This is a winner. This is a guy who would bring the Giants back to competency and relevancy. He's not perfect. The Steelers should have won a lot more playoff games during his tenure than they have, but even still, he's never had a losing season as a head coach. That's the selling point if you're the New York Giants. If you want to raise your floor, you want to become a relevant football team again, Mike Tomlin will have you as a relevant football team overnight. The New York Giants do not blow those 4 10-point leads with Mike Tomlin. The New York Giants are a 6-win team this season right now. If Mike Tomlin was coaching this team, I wholeheartedly believe that. And if they were to have Mike Tomlin on the sideline in 2026, I think that they would make the playoffs in 2026. So there is a lot of selling points for Mike Tomlin. It's not a perfect marriage. I think that when you look at Tomlin and his lack of playoff success, that could be a deterrent. When you look at some of the hirings that he's made on his staff, Arthur Smith, for example, that's a deterrent to me. He's not perfect. But again, if you're talking about stabilizing the organization, resetting the culture, and bringing it back to relevancy, if Mike Tomlin is available, he checks all of the boxes. He is priority number one.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there is no better leader of men than Mike Tomlin. Every single player will buy into his teachings, right? Burns, there might be a level we haven't seen yet, and I thought we've seen it all. Dexter Lawrence, he'll be back to playing at the highest level you've seen. Abdul Carter, you'll see the best version of Abdul Carter very soon. Even Okereke, like our corners, Javon Holland, like the safeties, everybody will play up for this guy. The offensive line will die for this guy. The receivers will sacrifice themselves for this guy. Like Jackson Dart, he'll be motivated just watching Mike Tomlin on the sideline, giving him the death stare. You know what I mean? Like this is a guy that just his presence alone will elevate the floor of this team to playoffs. Right? The floor of this team right now is 3 wins a season. The floor of the team with Mike Tomlin, a head coach, is 9 wins, right? Like that's the difference. Like you said, the more concerning issues are like the coaching staff hires and stuff like that. He'll get the best of the best if he wants them. He just has made some weird decisions in the past regarding that. But you look at the list of quarterbacks he's had over the last couple of years. I mean, he has like 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers. I don't know, it's like 34, 35, whatever he is, but he's obviously way past his prime. Still looking decent this year, by the way. He had Russell Wilson, who was washed, and Justin Fields, who, by the way, his work with Justin Fields, of what they did for Justin Fields, convinced the Jets to give him $40 million. So let's just consider the fact that they made Justin Fields look competent. And now you see what's going on with the Jets, and he can't even pass the ball. They had Kenny Pickett at quarterback. They had the smallest hands I've ever seen. And then they had the washed up versions of Ben Roethlisberger towards the end of his career in 2020 and 2021. It's been 3, 4, 5, 6 years of having not so good quarterbacks. So you give him Jackson Dart and you let him hire an OC that's going to position Dart for success, and you let him manage the team. Hell yeah, I'm interested in that. Hell yeah. Like, that's, if Mike Tomlin shakes free, he is the layup hire. You hire him without interviewing anybody else. That's how easy it would be. So, yeah, like I wish he becomes available. I highly doubt it, but obviously, the fact that it's even a thought is enough for me to get excited.
Absolutely. I would love to see Mike Tomlin coaching the New York Giants. Again, if Mike Tomlin was coaching the New York Giants, I'm confident they're making it to the playoffs. And that's how you feel when Tomlin's your head coach, because he is so successful. He is such a leader of men, and he does get the most out of his players. He always has, and he always will. So I don't really know if he's going to shake free from Pittsburgh. I don't think he wants to leave. I don't know if it's true that Pittsburgh is really considering moving on, but if they do, keep an eye out, because the New York Giants, I'm sure, would love to have Mike Tomlin, but so would 5 other teams that are going to have vacancies. Everybody's going to want Mike Tomlin on their sidelines. And just the last point that I'll make on Tomlin, Alex, when you think back on the New York Giants' recent run of failed head coaches, all of these guys were top coordinators that they hired because they were the hot, exciting names. The last time the Giants had a good head coach with stability was Tom Coughlin. Tom Coughlin, when the Giants hired him, he was a former successful head coach who needed a change of scenery. He was with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He brought the Jaguars to a lot of success. He's in their ring of honor. Tom Coughlin was an excellent coach with the Jacksonville Jaguars. The same way Mike Tomlin was an excellent coach with the Pittsburgh Steelers and will be in their ring of honor. But at a certain point, sometimes coaches need a change of scenery, and that second win that they get with that change of scenery can often be really fruitful, like it was for Tom Coughlin when he got his second win and he came to New York and he led the Giants to 2 Super Bowls. Tomlin, could a similar story be written? Could the Giants see it a similar way? Maybe he needs that kind of change of scenery the same way Coughlin did. Maybe. And if he gets that change of scenery, and if it is here in New York, I'm sure the Giants will have Coughlin expectations for him because he's Mike Tomlin. So would be a top priority candidate. Let's see if he does shake free. Now, the next guy, another one, I don't think that Kevin Stefanski is going to be available, Alex. I'll just put that out there. I don't think he becomes a free agent, essentially. I think the Cleveland Browns would be insane to move on from Kevin Stefanski. Stefanski is a former head coach of the year, and I know so was Brian Dable, but Stefanski is a really good head coach who has been dealing with a lot of issues on that roster, like a tremendous amount of issues for years. He was dealt probably the worst hand of all time with the Deshaun Watson debacle. That's what we're going to refer to it as for now, because I don't want to dive deeper into it. And since then, he's been dealing with revolving doors at the quarterback position. I mean, for God's sakes, the Browns were starting Dorian Thompson-Robinson for most of their games last season. How do you expect any head coach to find major success with that quarterback situation? I mean, Jameis Winston went out there and played 7 games for them. Jameis Winston was our quarterback 3 for the first 10 weeks of this season, and he was starting games for the Cleveland Browns last year. Stefanski's a great coach. He's an excellent offensive mind, and he is in many ways a QB guru. He's had that label in the past. He would be eager to work with Jackson Dart, that's for sure, and I think it would be a good marriage between him and Jackson Dart. I think he could get the most out of Jackson Dart. So if Stefanski's available, he's one of the top 5 candidates without a doubt to me. But I really don't think that he's going to be available, because I do think the Cleveland Browns can understand that they have a great head coach and they just haven't given him a good enough roster to work with. Right now, he's dealing with Dillon Gabriel. Alex, I'm going to say this. I think Dillon Gabriel might be the 50th best quarterback in the NFL right now. Like, seriously, there might be 49 quarterbacks ahead of him that could go onto a field and play better than Dillon Gabriel. Guy's not an NFL quarterback to me. I didn't think he was in the pre-draft process. I've watched some of his film while he's playing for the Cleveland Browns. He looks terrible. I feel bad for Kevin Stefanski, but at the same time, it's on him. Put Shedeur Sanders in. Try and put a spark in this offense. That's a coaching decision to have Dillon Gabriel starting, and he shouldn't be. So Stefanski hasn't been perfect by any means, but he is a good head coach. He would be one of the top candidates in my opinion. But Alex, if he does shake free, if he no longer is the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, would you like to see him as the head coach of the New York Giants?
I mean, another really good option. Obviously, he had so much promise, but like they just have done the weirdest things at quarterback, like you said. I think that the fact they're not starting Sanders, the fact they drafted Sanders and kind of put him at QB3 and like buried him behind, like who was that? Like Flacco, Pickett, and then
Yeah, he was QB4 at a time. They were holding five
Gabriel.
quarterbacks on their roster this summer. It
Yeah,
was
like what the
insane.
hell was that? Like, I mean, listen, if you guys are fans of Fireside Giants for a long time, you know I was not a big Shedeur Sanders fan. In fact, I was probably one of his biggest like deniers in terms of him being worth a first like top 5, top 10 pick. I feel pretty good about that take now. That could change if he comes in and plays really well. Who knows? But the truth of the matter is like they seem to have like no idea what they're doing or what's going on over there. I don't really think they like him. Like they don't like his personality. I don't think they like you know, he said some stuff to the media already about the situation, but he's been mostly fine, at least to the public. So I don't know. Like they have to have some sort of vendetta against him because he should be playing. Gabriel's really bad. So really strange situation. It almost feels like Kevin Stefanski was given Sanders despite the fact he didn't necessarily want him. And now he's just trying to like bury him because he doesn't really want him. Like that's not his choice. So there might be some sort of miscommunication between him and the GM. So, you know, do I like Stefanski? Yeah, he's a good head coach. You know, he has his problems. There's others that I probably would prefer if they shook free by far. But yeah, he becomes a really attractive option just because I mean, you look at their defense, lights out defense that the Browns have, and then you look at the team, they always fight. Like they have their team always is fighting, and they don't really make horrible in-game decisions either. Their quarterback situation is just a complete mess. So I do think that with a better team, better situation, you know, better quarterback, he could be a much better head coach. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that one.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Stefanski. I think he's a good head coach in a bad situation. He's definitely hit a rough patch. He hasn't been perfect by any means. Nobody is. But Stefanski would definitely be an upgrade, in my opinion, over what the Giants have had over the last several years. And, you know, not to just diss Brian Dable. You guys know I really liked Brian Dable, and I really wanted him to be successful, especially after that 2022 season. I totally bought in on Dable, but unfortunately, he made too many mistakes the past 2 seasons, and it just is what it is. Now let's see if the Giants can get a guy who won't make as many mistakes. Let's talk about Steve Spagnuolo, former New York Giants defensive coordinator, Super Bowl champion with the New York Giants. Guy knows how to scheme a defense. What's he got at this point? He had 2 rings with the Giants. Is that right? He's got 3 rings, I believe, with the Chiefs. So I think he has 5 total Super Bowl rings. Is that right? I mean, he is probably a Hall of Famer as a coordinator, not as a head coach, but as a defensive coordinator. He's probably going to make it to the Hall of Fame one day. And that's rare. I don't know if there is a guy who was strictly in the Hall of Fame as a coordinator, but Spagnuolo's got the strongest case out of anybody for that. He has coached the best defenses in football for 20 odd years. He is a leader, that's for sure. And of course, he's got the connection to the New York Giants organization. They still view him very highly. John Mara loves Steve Spagnuolo. The Giants front office absolutely loves Steve Spagnuolo. And Giants fans absolutely love Steve Spagnuolo. He's done wonders with that Kansas City Chiefs defense that when he got there was a struggling unit. He overhauled it, completely changed it. And now it runs as one of the best defenses in the league, despite the overturn in talent that they've had. If you guys remember, they had an all-pro cornerback a couple of years ago, traded him away, and the Chiefs defense didn't miss a beat. And their defensive line is constantly harassing quarterbacks. It's just Steve Spagnuolo, man. That's the effect of him. Could he be a good head coach? I don't know. He was the head coach in the past with the Los Angeles Rams when they were still the St. Louis Rams, and that didn't go as planned. He had a very bad stint there with the St. Louis Rams. And then he was the interim head coach for the New York Giants at the tail end of the 2017 season, and the Giants went 1-3 during that span. I believe his all-time head coaching record is underneath 300, so he's not exactly a guy with a proven head coaching experience, but he does have proven coaching experience defensively, and he's well respected in the organization, a fan favorite. This could be a guy that I think is at the top of the New York Giants internal wish list. I think they would love to have him back in the building, but I also don't know if 64-year-old Steve Spagnuolo really wants to be a head coach at this stage in his career. He might be content as one of the best defensive coordinators of all time. So, Alex, what are your thoughts on Steve Spagnuolo?
I think that there's only one team he'd ever consider doing it for, and I think it's the Giants. You know what I mean? Like, if there was one team that could convince him to be the head coach, it would be the Giants. And I think he would pour his heart and soul into it. He is a genius, brilliant defensive mind. He is always adapting. And the Chiefs have a great defense, but their personnel sometimes are lacking. And he turns draft picks into impact players within the first 2 years. Like, that's what I'll say about this guy. He manages to get the best out of everybody, and they draft for a purpose. Like, they draft their board, like their board of talent is not just BPA. It's like BPA, but also fitting exactly what we want. And they get players that always play well, like always perform, always come up big, always have an impact, whatever it might be. Of course, there's times where they don't, and it happens to every team. But you're talking about a team that's won multiple championships and in low scoring battles at times. Obviously, minus the Eagles won last year. Like, that was it. It is what it is. It happens to the best of them. But he's one of the most brilliant defensive minds in the game. You give him the resources and the talent on that defense, and you let him work. Put a good DC in place. His relationships are deep. He'll be able to convince any assistant to come work for him. He's the same thing with Mike McCarthy. Like, Spags is going to come in and there'll be a line of people wanting to be his OC and DC. You know what I mean? Like, he'll have no problem filling out a coaching staff. That's for certain. And I think that I just want, what I really want though is, and the only thing I'm a little bit concerned about with Spags is that it's too close to home. You know what I mean? Like, it's good. Like, he may get roped back into the Giants' way. And I actually want to go away from that. You know what I mean? I don't want it to be the Giants' way. I want it to be whoever comes in is objective, and their opinions are not like falling back into the usual Giants norms. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it is something to think about. I want him to be his own guy, have his own way, his own style. He does have experience. I think he got kind of a raw deal with the Rams way back in the day in St. Louis. And there's a lot to like about Spags. He's definitely towards the top of my list of guys that I'm absolutely considering. And he's got my respect, like, first and foremost. Like, his team fights for him. His defense always fights for him. He's a leader. Like, he has my respect. And I think that's a good place to start in terms of looking for candidates.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Steve Spagnuolo. I think every player does and every coaching staff does. Spagnuolo really is one of the most credible coaches in the league right now, just not from a head coaching standpoint. So I would love to see if Steve Spagnuolo gets brought in for an interview. I imagine that he will, and what kind of interest is generated on both sides of the coin from there. Steve Spagnuolo is towards the Giants and the Giants towards him. But I do want to kind of echo some of your sentiments there. I don't want the New York Giants to just look into the past and try and recapture something from 2 decades ago. Okay, NFL is constantly evolving and changing, and I do feel like the Giants have struggled to evolve with it. And going back to the Steve Spagnuolos of the world and those other guys, the Anarumos, that does concern me that maybe, hey, they're just looking too far back into the past and not properly looking ahead to the future. But Spagnuolo is a great coach. He would be one of the top candidates. Let's see what happens. Now, next guy up, Alex, this is one that I've mentioned to you many, many times. Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin. Now, Lane Kiffin is one of the best coaches in college football right now. He is a hot name for several head coach openings, not just the New York Giants, the University of Florida, and some of these other LSU, some of these other big SEC teams are all vying to pry Ole Miss's head coach Lane Kiffin away. But Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, seems like a perfect marriage. Guys had tremendous success there. They love him down there in Mississippi. He loves it there in Mississippi, and he really is a player's coach. Lane Kiffin is a great leader for those young men. He has done a tremendous job overhauling that Ole Miss college football program. But then again, you go deeper into his career. 17 years ago, he was a head coach in the NFL with the Las Vegas Raiders. They weren't the Vegas Raiders at the time. They were Oakland, but even still, that wasn't a great stint. And that left a sour taste in the mouth of many in the NFL. So he has had some poor stints. He has had some rough patches, but he still has battled through that adversity and proven to be a really good head coach in my mind. It's why he's so coveted across college football right now. And of course, the obvious elephant in the room, him and Jackson Dart are best buddies. Jackson Dart absolutely loves him. He absolutely loves Jackson Dart. So if Lane Kiffin ever is going to leave Ole Miss, would it realistically be for UF, or would it be for an opportunity to coach Jackson Dart at the NFL level? I don't think he's ever coaching in the NFL again unless it's this opportunity right here, right now. And I do think Lane Kiffin is going to be one of the top candidates for the New York Giants. So I like him. He's not my number one candidate, but he's not far off from being that. I think Lane Kiffin's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Ole Miss they overperform like every year because of him and his offense and what he does to make it friendly for quarterbacks. And a lot of people thought that offense was going to hold Jackson Dart back. And in fact, it didn't at all. And in fact, they just kind of copied and pasted it into their current system, and it's working real well. So listen, Lane Kiffin is the guy that you hire to make sure Jackson Dart succeeds. But that's the thing. And that's where I kind of get a little bit turned off by it, is because Jackson Dart's going to probably succeed anyway. I want someone that's for the team. I know that Lane Kiffin has, that camaraderie like about him. He obviously is a good head coach, but everyone in that locker room is going to know that he prefers Jackson Dart and is going to always preference him. You know what I mean? Like he's not going to have the objective mindset. People are going to know, oh, him and Dart are best buddies. Like Dart can do no wrong. You know what I mean? Like, so that's where like I get a little, not to say that that's the case, because they'll probably push him obviously. And obviously like he expects him to grow and develop, but I think they need someone that doesn't have connections to players and coaches and this and that. And like, I like Spags. I'd be happy with him, but he has a lot of connections to this organization, right? Lane Kiffin has a connection to our quarterback. So they I kind of feel like finding an objective person with, no preferences or this, they're coming in to do a job. They're coming in to overhaul the culture and the standard. That is it. And then everything else will fall into place from there. Like, that's kind of what my primary focus is in. And people say, well, we brought Joe Judge in to do that. Joe Judge was a special teams coordinator. Okay. He was so unqualified to be a head coach, like in hindsight, that if they ever do that crap again, they were like, oh, Bill Belichick says good things about him. Let's hire Joe Judge. He's a special teams coordinator. No, that's not what the Joe Judge was. Yeah, he was the rah guy, blah, blah, dove and fumbles in the water and good stuff. It was a good time. Great for, social media when it happened, but he was not qualified for that job. Bill Belichick said, yes, hire him. And the Giants did it. Like, they have had to learn from that mistake. They need to bring in someone with some experience, who's objective, who knows how to do this job, who has experience doing this job, at least at the collegiate level. So, that's kind of where my preference is. I like Lane Kiffin. He's fun. He's himself. Like, he's unique in every sense, but I am unsure how he would manage the whole team. But I know he'd manage Jackson Dart really well. So, like, there's pros and cons.
Yeah, he's got a great quarterback track record, and I think that he's kind of my thing with it is I think he's figured it out now. Like I think he had a lot of growing pains throughout his coaching career. You mentioned there were some rough patches here. Of course, the Las Vegas Raiders, Oakland at the time, that stands out, but I just think he's figured it out now at Ole Miss. And again, I don't know why he would want to walk away from that. I think he's going to want to stay with Ole Miss because he does seem to have a lifetime job there. He's a legend there already after 4 seasons. So I think it makes sense for Lane Kiffin to stay at Ole Miss. If he wants to elevate to the NFL level, now's the time to do it, to try and coach Jackson Dart and keep that perfect marriage and, make Dart the superstar that we all know he can be and that Kiffin has always believed he could be. That's why Dart was at USC initially, because the two wanted to be a pair. And then Dart transferred to Ole Miss when Lane Kiffin went to Ole Miss. And the story was written then. We know how it went. So I like Lane Kiffin. Like you said, he's his own guy. I think he is a great leader. I do think he's at times a little bit of an oddball, though. And I don't know if he's a perfect match for what the New York Giants have in terms of what they're looking to build internally in that organization within their culture. But definitely one of the top names to consider as one of the top head coaches in college football. He'll be among 2 of the top coaches from college football that the Giants will consider. They're the one being Marcus Freeman, who we already mentioned. But let's go ahead with Jeff Hafley, Alex, Packers defensive coordinator, who put on a show the other night on Monday Night Football versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles still snuck away with the win. I think we can blame LaFleur for that. The Packers kind of fumbled the ball there, but defensively, that unit is sick. And Jeff Hafley has done a tremendous job orchestrating what is one of the best pass rushes and just defenses in general in the NFL right now. And I know you've got some thoughts on Jeff Hafley, so I'm excited to hear them.
I mean, Jeff Hafley, if you've watched that Packers defense, they are lights out. I mean, dominant in every single sense. They just locked the Eagles in prison, despite the fact Jordan Love and the offense couldn't get things going to, win a game. That defense kept them in the game. That defense will keep them in playoff games. And he is a star coordinator, no doubt about it. But again, like I'm going to keep saying it, I don't really care about star coordinators anymore. We've already done the star coordinator thing. We did it with, McAdoo. We did it with even Shermer. We did it with Dable. Like, it didn't work. You need to have a head coach who's going to look at the team as a whole, not individually. So, Hafley, like, very good coordinator. Maybe he would adapt to that and he would be able to bring in stuff like make that defense elite and then be able to apply his strategies and style and become a really great leader. It's yet to be seen. We just don't know because he's never done it before. Except he did do it at Boston College. And we do know that the Giants have lots of connections to Boston College, right? I mean, Tom Coughlin, you look at Mara was an undergraduate at Boston College. Like, they have lots of connections to BC, but he was a very average. They went 7-6, I think, in 2 years. So he didn't really do much at Boston College. He has experience, but he didn't really do much. So, there's that. He's a great defensive mind. That's kind of where you have to make that decision, though. Like, do you go for the great coordinator who has a little bit of a head coaching experience, even if it wasn't great? Do you take the chance? I think that this is ultimately like, we're just speaking. I wish that we could be a fly on the wall for these meetings, because that's where we're going to see that's where they're really going to be able to see how are they going to lead, with what type of intensity, their approach, their style, their program. Like, this is going to be finding out who is best for the team and not best for an individual, right? Your coordinators, like someone said to me on Twitter, like, well, I was like, you get a really good head coach who's good for the team, and then you bring in coordinators who are good for the offense and defense. Like, and then you let them get to work and let that. I think Ben Johnson became so great. He's like, well, then your OC is going to leave in a year. And I'm like, that's a good thing. That means you're winning games. That means you're a good football team. Like, yeah, unit's really good if you're losing coordinators. But then again, that's how you create a tree. Like, people say, I want the Shanahan tree. I want the Belichick tree. You create a tree. The guy that's the OC teaches the guy below him how to be just as good. That's how you create a tree. The Giants don't have a tree. They have a bush, and the bush is on fire. So it's like, that's kind of the analogy I would use. But you bring in a good head coach who's going to command respect, bring in really good assistants and coordinators, then the tree is formed. Because then the guy that replaces the OC that leaves, just as good. And then you create that funnel, and people want to work for you because they know, oh, my career is going to go places. I'm going to end up a head coach. I'm going to end up this. I'm going to end up that. People want to work for you. The best and the best will come to you. So that's a good thing. It's a good thing you have coaches leaving, because that means your team is winning. They're doing a really good job, and they're getting opportunities elsewhere. And you get comp picks for that shit. So, like, people that say, oh, our OC is going to leave because they're too good, you have no idea what you're talking about. No idea. That's how bad the Giants have been, that we actually want guys to be bad and stay, or average and stay, or this and that. You know what I mean? Like, it's embarrassing how down bad we've gotten in our perception of what actually is good. The Lions are still a good team. They lost Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. And they're still one of the best football teams in the league, because their head coach is awesome, and their head coach can manage the team, and he can step in and fill in the gaps when need be. That's what the Giants need. A utility head coach that commands respect and commands discipline and effort. That is my priority, bar none.
I'm with you. I agree with you. I think you make some really great points there. And especially with the Lions, one of my favorite storylines is a little off topic, but one of my favorite storylines that has emerged this season in the NFL, the Detroit Lions having a top 5 offense in the NFL, and Dan Campbell saying it's not good enough, taking the play calling duties away from the offensive coordinator, calling the plays himself last week, and the Lions explode for a 44-point road performance. That is a leader. That is the best head coach in the NFC North, and one of the best in the NFL right now. That is just one of my favorite stories. That just shows you standards of excellence, right? I need a guy with standards of excellence like Dan Campbell, because look at the New York Giants. Their standards of excellence were very low the past few years. Offense isn't scoring. They're not going to change a thing. They're just going to keep trotting out the same offense, the same staff, whatever. Dan Campbell says, oh, we're averaging almost 30 points per game. Why aren't we averaging 30 points per game? I'm calling the plays now. And now, of course, they go ahead and they're probably going to average 30 points per game. I just thought that was an incredible story. And I think that's a lesson worthwhile discussing while talking about who should be the next head coach of the New York Giants. I'm not saying it can be Dan Campbell. It can't be. The Lions are not going to let him leave for anything. But just talking about these standards of excellence, the standard that Dan Campbell sets is so high. And I want a guy who sets that high standard of excellence. So, but speaking on Jeff Hafley, I'll just say this, Alex. If the Giants were to hire him, this defensive line would probably be just an absolute monster to go up against. I mean, he knows how to put that together. And if you want to unlock this defensive line, Jeff Hafley will be able to accomplish that, as well as some other guys on this list. But one other last note that I want to add on Jeff Hafley, Alex, that I think you might be interested in. When he was with Ohio State as their defensive coordinator in 2019, that's when he got hired. He was only there for a year, but He quickly established himself as one of the best recruiters in the country. He was ranked ninth overall recruiter for the 2020 class by 247 Sports. So he is a guy that knows how to connect with young men and knows how to attract uh, good football players into his program and then lead a program. So I think that's something with Jeff Hafley that's an underrated selling point. His ability to connect with people and his ability to attract people
Not at
into his
all.
program is definitely a big selling point.
Yeah, he seems like he's had his hands in about everything, right? Scouting, coaching, head coaching, coordinating, all of it. So, he knows how every single system works. And I think that's important for a head coach because, he's at these scouting events, he's doing this, he's doing that. He has to evaluate everything when the season ends. And, you have to kind of think of things from a objective and in wider lens. Brian Dable got way too fixated on things. And I think and he was really emotional about specific things. I think that's really what drove him off a cliff was he was not oriented to the team. He was oriented to the offense, and that's why he kept taking play calling away. And then when Shane Bowen was doing dumb stuff, he didn't step in and make any changes. He was not for the team. Like, he was a coordinator at head coach. And even then, he kept giving up play calling. So, he just didn't have that. He'll be a great OC or a great quarterback coach or something like that down the line, no doubt about it. But, he has an eye. Apologies. Like, he has an eye for quarterback talent. Like, he will go to a team that needs to find a quarterback. Like, I wouldn't even be surprised, like, even ended up like the Jets or something like that as their OC, and they were like, find us a quarterback. Like, you found Jackson Dart. I'm just saying, I'm just throwing stuff out there. Like, he'll go to a team that needs to find somebody, and like he'll let them be involved in that process. So like, whatever it might be for Dable, it is what it is. But Hafley having his hands in a lot of different kind of cookie jars, I think, is a good thing. And that oversight, that mentality of knowing the whole operation is mission critical for a team that needs more of a general manager at head coach and not so much of a coordinator at head coach. But even so, because of his defensive alignment, defensive expertise, he's going to be able to help the defense a whole lot. And he's going to be able to get himself a damn good defensive coordinator to manage things. So, he is an attractive option. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I do think that Hafley is attractive. I'm just curious to see if one of these other better, like, established leaders step into a role where the Giants just can't say no.
Yeah, that's exactly it. He's a great candidate, great coach, but will there be a better coach available? So that's really the big question mark. But he's going to be one of the top candidates for sure. I expect him to get a head coaching job, whether it's with the New York Giants or if it's with another team. Somebody's going to hire Jeff Hafley, in my opinion, for all the reasons that you mentioned. He's had his hands in everything. He can do a lot. He can be that CEO because of his experiences all across the board. And he really is a great defensive coach. So a lot of big selling points there. And we will wrap this up, Alex, with interim head coach and former New York Giants offensive coordinator Mike Kafka. I say former because just now, Mike Kafka announced while speaking with the media that he is relinquishing offensive coordinator duties to Tim Kelly, New York Giants tight ends coach. He will continue to call the plays, Mike Kafka will. He's going to continue to be the primary voice that Jackson Dart hears on game days, but he's stepping back from some of those offensive coordinator duties to oversee the entirety of the operation as the head coach. Let me say this. Great first step. That's exactly what I want to see Mike Kafka do. Not try and be the OC/head coach. It's hard enough to be an interim head coach mid-season getting pushed into that big chair. Hard enough to do that. Harder if you're doing two jobs at once. So seeing him kind of relinquish those duties, step fully in that head coaching role and take that by the horns, that's what I want to see from Mike Kafka. I think this is an important leadership step as established himself as the new leader of the New York Giants. And I said this in the solo episode that I did yesterday, Alex. I think Kafka's got a really good chance of winning this job. He's a hot name in circles across the NFL. He's viewed as one of the top young head coaching candidates in the league. He's been a finalist for several head coaching jobs. He's interviewed with like 8 different teams. He's been a finalist 2 or 3 times. Guys, this guy has a lot of fans across the NFL and within the New York Giants building. He hasn't been a perfect offensive coordinator for the Giants. In fact, at times he's been a bad one, but at other times he's been a good one. And I think this is an opportunity for him to really audition and to say to the New York Giants, I have a lot of potential. I can do this role, and I want to continue to build with Jackson Dart. And so if the Giants go out there and let's say that these 10-point leads that they turned into losses somehow, all those disappear and they start winning those games down the stretch, well, Mike Kafka effect there. The loss of Brian Dable offset by the addition of Mike Kafka potentially leading them to some of those wins. He can really sell to ownership. I was here. I know the program. I know the culture that we need to alter, how to change it. Dable did this wrong. I did this right. And I want to keep working with Jackson Dart, and Jackson Dart wants to keep working with me. And ownership, you don't want to mess up his development by bringing in a new coach. That's what Mike Kafka can pitch to ownership, but he really does have to deliver in these final 7 weeks of the season.
He has to. I mean, just today, he had said his press conference, and off rip, he, was already named a new OC, which was obviously going to happen, but he went and put Jameis Winston as a starting quarterback, and that was an easy decision that Brian Dable refused to make for some reason. And then the second one was he said he actually sat down with Shane Bowen to tweak a few things. You're telling me Brian Dable didn't sit down with Shane Bowen to tweak a few things this whole time? Like, that's what that said to me. Like, Brian Dable didn't sit down and tweak a few things that clearly need to be tweaked. Call me crazy, but I don't think Brian Dable was doing anything this whole time. I keep saying it. I really do not think he was doing anything this whole time. He was just dancing around, hanging out, having a blast, not preparing properly, hanging out with Jackson Dart, telling jokes, having erotic novels, according to reporters behind the scenes. Like, Mike Kafka stepped in on day one, and I don't even think he's going to get this job long term, and made changes that are seemingly obvious to everybody except for Brian Dable. So very curious to see how this unfolds. Again, need to see it to believe it, need to see what actually happens here. But Jameis Winston as QB2, easiest decision on earth. Don't know why it didn't happen earlier. He should have came in when Jackson Dart was knocked out of the game last week, right? Would have given them a better chance at winning. You look at just the defense in general, some tweaks and changes. I'm curious to see what those tweaks and changes looks like in his perspective. But I think we're going to see a little bit of a different game. I'm also curious to see what his situational awareness is, his decision-making in big moments, like how the offense looks now that he's not OC and now he's the head coach. Like, how does that work? Is he still calling plays? I imagine so. Can he manage calling plays, but also situational awareness and the entire team at the same time? So this is a humongous opportunity for Mike Kafka to audition, not just for the Giants role, but for other ones too. Like, this is an audition for him. And I'm bought in to watching because it's interesting, and the Giants often make crazy changes to keep us involved during the second half of the season when all hope is lost, and another back end of the year where we're just like, okay, like another storyline to follow. And this one is at least interesting because I'm curious to see how much of the problem was Brian Dable and how much of the solution will be everybody else.
And we're going to figure that out over the next 7 weeks. We're going to find out if Dable was or wasn't the problem based on how this team's performance potentially changes. Again, if they start closing out those fourth quarter leads, if the defensive scheme looks entirely different, we'll learn that Brian Dable was in many ways the issue on both sides of the ball. But if the problems persist, we'll learn that Shane Bowen is truly the problem. We'll learn that there are bigger problems at play. And that's why I think everything is still on the table for the New York Giants. I know they said Joe Shane's going to be back, but they actually didn't say that. They said he's going to lead the search for a head coach and that they really like him, but they didn't necessarily say he will be the GM in 2026, which they could have said in their statement, but didn't. So I think everything's on the table still, including Mike Kafka winning this job. I think Kafka is a bright mind. I think that he's kind of had a tough go about it with Dable kind of overseeing him. The back and forth on Kafka calling the plays, not calling the plays, now he's calling them again. A lot of that was Dable turmoil is how I'm going to describe it. And I think clean slate now, I've got an open mind, and I think Kafka is a good leader, and I think that he can learn a lot about what went wrong for the Giants over the last couple of years, and knowing that they were really close to being a good football team a couple times. Maybe he has a different perspective on it than Dable did, has some changes to make, and perhaps that leads to some winning games for the New York Giants. So open mind for Kafka. I think he's really got an opportunity here to win this job, and I think he can really sell to ownership, continuity. And I also think for Giants fans to sell you potentially on it, if the Giants are going to keep Joe Shane in 2026, they're going to be keeping him on a hot seat. Do you really want them to sign or hire a head coach to a 5-year deal while they've got this GM on a hot seat here? It might be better to maintain some semblance of continuity so that if you do need a clean break from everybody after the 2026 or even 2027 season, it's not a clean break with new blood coming in. You keep the same guys in place and you clean break in a couple of years. So if you want to look at it from the doom and gloom worst case scenario outlook, Kafka being the head coach, there's a couple of positives from that respect as well. So this was a fat, beefy episode, a long one, full hour breakdown on these head coaching candidates. But overdue. I know you guys have been asking for it. Alex and I carved out some time today to go over all of these guys, and I know we've kind of only scratched the surface. There's a bunch of other candidates that we're going to dive into. McCarthy, Kubiak, some other names that you guys are inevitably going to throw into the comment section, and we're going to get through all of them. We'll probably do a part 2, maybe another hour-long breakdown. Who knows? But we're going to have a lot of fun throughout this head coaching search between now and January. We fully anticipate that the Giants will make an interesting decision. We don't know if it's going to be the right decision. We've thought that before, but it's going to be an interesting search for a head coach, and we're going to keep you guys updated on it every step of the way. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you are listening to this on Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. But without further ado, I'll catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go New York Giants.
Perfect.